it's time for our very first Good Idea, Bad Idea. Good idea. Deconstructing the legacy of an iconic hero.
You built that company, and now Powers is making nerve gas there. You gotta do something. You're Batman.
I was Batman.
Bad idea. Demolishing the legacy of an iconic hero.
This is a Millennium Falcon. You're Han Solo.
I used to be. Han Solo, the rebellion general?
No, the smuggler.
The end. So there's an argument going around the amateur analyst space about the nature of how legacy characters are treated these days. Basically, they'll be killed and replaced, both figuratively and in some cases, literally. The funny thing is, growing up as a young boy in the 1990s, well, this is nothing new to me. The trend of using an old franchise's name with new characters in the title roles has been going around for some time now, especially when the replacement is young and hip. In fact, sometimes the replacement job is successful and the franchise is completely rewritten by a new incarnation. I would argue the reason we get so many male legacy heroes replaced by female legacy characters is because those are in right now, those are trendy, and that says quite a lot about the people replacing them. I mean, we've never seen any of the classic female action heroes get replaced so easily. It's always the male ones for some odd reason. Seems we always come back to gender when we're talking about this stuff. This just in, we live in a matriarchy. See our next All Access bulletin, Water is Wet. So let's compare the most iconic example of a replaced legacy character with its inspiration, and what I think is the better of the two. The Last Jedi. If anything was going to take the title of final boss of any amateur internet critic, it would be this. In order to examine what makes Luke such a bad example, we have to examine the reason why he turned in his badge so easily. The first thing to realize is that this is intended to be a shocking twist, that Luke isn't the big hero we expect him to be. This is even portrayed as a part of the narrative, a mystery. Why is Luke so different? That is a large part of the reason why Luke's portrayal doesn't work. He almost feels like a different character. Because he is. Mark Hamill even portrays him as a different character, his own words. Luke's new personality is the result of failure in the past. In a moment of weakness, Luke fell to a vision of Ben Solo killing his friends and family, to the point where he tried to do something, but by the time he was already holding the saber, it was too late to stop. Being responsible for the galaxy's greatest threat and the destruction of all he holds dear would eat at Luke. But it almost feels unbelievable in the way it's portrayed, and keep in mind this is the only explanation we ever get. In fact, the first version we get of this telling is a self-serving memory or an outright lie from Kylo that provides a very striking and harmful image that negatively colors the reputation of this scene. But how about the relationship with his replacement? And this is not going into the details of my thoughts on Rey from Nowhere. Rey and Luke have a caustic relationship that never really develops beyond mutual disagreement. There's not really a moment where the two really get to bond with each other and impact the other in symmetrical ways. She doesn't help Luke get back on track, Yoda's the one who does that. Instead, she takes over his role. It can be done. She had a great bonding experience with Han Solo, but it's not being done with the main character, which makes it problematic. Finally, Luke's redemption leaves a lot to be desired. I'll start by saying that Luke's death is handled very well. Sacrificing himself like his old master did and dying to a binary sunset is exactly the right way for him to go. But one problem is the timing. The Last Jedi is the second film of the trilogy. This is not the time to be killing off the main character. If Luke had died in this way in the first part of the trilogy, it would have been considered a passing the torch moment and a ratcheting of the tension. And killing him off in this way at the last part of the trilogy would have served as a good ending for not just his story, but the story of the Skywalker saga in general. Unfortunately, they went with neither, and what we got at the middle feels very hollow, for lack of a better word. Also, one fireside chat with Yoda should not be enough to cure a long-standing case of depression. This is experience talking. I mentioned that this was possibly inspired by another moment from a very famous television series, so let's check that out and see how that does it better. The entire premise of Batman Beyond made the show sound silly in and of itself. A high school-aged Batman set in a high-tech future? What's to love? This is why I think it is smart for Batman Beyond to start with the most important question first. Why did Bruce hang up his cowl? In some stories, Batman is taken out by a superior foe, one who outmatches him. In others, he breaks his one rule and becomes a villain in and of himself. However, while most of these stories typically target Batman, Batman Beyond targets Bruce Wayne. Ultimately, what defeats Batman is simply being too old to continue. His body just can't keep up. But Bruce? Whew, he takes quite a beating in this series. His company is taken over by a seedy businessman, the kind he used to fight that created some of his greatest enemies. His found family is torn apart by his greatest enemy, to the point where he lets them go just to protect them and himself. The legacy of the Batman is a legend that is only immortalized on Broadway in a cheap musical. But the nail that seals the coffin is, just as Luke, being forced to break that which makes him Batman and what makes him Bruce Wayne. Bruce's life is systematically destroyed in the backstory of Batman Beyond, but this is not the end. Seeing Terry McGinnis's drive to do the right thing, even at the cost of what may be the correct thing, inspires something in Bruce to take up the fight once again in a support role to mentor this new Batman. Terry has always admired Batman, and now having a close connection to him helps him appreciate the man behind the mask. In turn, Terry serves almost like the son Bruce never had, and the two begin to form a parental relationship. It helps that Terry shows reverence to the past rather than trying to kill it, so that's strike two right there. Most importantly, before he met Terry, Bruce was standing on a lone island just like Luke was. But the experience and time with Terry end up cracking Bruce's shell, and he ends up slowly returning to the outside world. He gets his company back, he reconciles with Tim and Barbara Gordon, his life slowly begins to start turning around. And the man who takes up the mantle of Batman is perfect for the role. Bruce made it to his darkest hour and was able to enjoy his retirement. It's a lesson we can all learn from, honestly. Listen, even our heroes have bad days. Sometimes they can even be defeated for a long time. But if we see our heroes get through their darkest hours, it can oftentimes inspire us to do the same. Thanks for listening to this very special episode. Like if you like, comment if you have something to say. I'll see you next one ever.